the topic of fulfillment has been mentioned at least 3 or 4 times. Supply chain demands, fulfillment demands, speed of shipping, especially in these uncommon times and over the past year. Knowing that the delivery ecosystem is under severe pressure, now we're going to hear from 3 retailers about how they hope to profitably fulfill orders this year by leveraging what they learned over this crazy past year in 2020. So welcome, James, and welcome to all of our panelists. I'm excited for this one.
I'm too. Thanks, Katie. So how are retailers delivering the goods? You know, we know the delivery ecosystem has been under pressure for the past year. So how retailers profitably fulfill orders, what lessons they've learned in 2020. These are things our panel is really well prepared and qualified to talk about. We have today Bob Goodliffe, CEO of Cyberweld, Lev Peker, CEO of carparts.com, and Adam Greenberg, president and founder of Northshore.com. So let's just jump into the session. Starting with Adam. A lot of retailers experienced a big increase in volume last year. That's not a secret. What was your experience, and how does the volume now compared with 2020 and also pre-pandemic levels?
Sure, thanks, James. At Northshore.com, we sell medical supplies, including adult diapers and incontinence supplies. So we actually noticed an increase in sales starting in middle of February last year. So earlier than some others might have started to see an increase. And it turns out our customers were aware that many medical supplies did come from China, and they were actually concerned about the outbreak in China just disrupting shipments out of China. Of course, they weren't yet concerned about the delays here on the US side. And then obviously once the state of emergency was declared in middle of March last year, there was a huge panic buying surge for our products. We experienced about a 350-400% increase for about 10 to 14 days in end of March and early April. And then we started to get depleted on supplies, and we're unable to keep up with those rapid shipments. So April and May, we were kind of systematically turning off advertising for certain products, especially on certain channels like our Amazon marketplace, prioritizing our own customers, especially ones that were signed up for subscription. But there was kind of a leveling off of sales because of lack of resupplies in spring of last year. And then things started to stabilize middle of the year. There's definitely been ups and downs on the supply side and on the demand side, depending on the news of the day. But I would say things have leveled off on an increase of 20 to 25% on average for our products versus middle of last year levels, and a little bit more than that over pre-pandemic levels.
Right, and the news of the day included everything from factories being shut down in China and the Suez Canal being blocked for a period of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll go next to Lev. Obviously, we've been going through a weird time for a year, and we all, heard about the shipping problems during the holiday period. Most carriers were above capacity. Have they gotten any better from your perspective?
No, so we're still facing some of the same challenges today as we were before. If you think about the supply chain, you've got inbound freight, so there is a container shortage. Every port is congested, so there are ships waiting outside the ports, waiting to be unloaded. And then once it's at the port, you got to get equipment to deliver it to your warehouse. So that hasn't really alleviated yet. And then once you ship the product out, it's got to get to the customer, and those times are a little bit longer than they used to be, primarily because the sorting hubs for UPS and FedEx, and depending on who you use, they're very congested. And then on top of that, getting the product out of your DC, your distribution center, is very difficult because it's hard to find labor. So the labor market is extremely tight. And again, depends on where your distribution centers are located. We have 5. One is in a very rural area. where the labor market is extremely small and it's very, very tight. The other distribution centers, it's a little bit easier to find labor, but it depends on where your DC is located. It's hard to get labor, and on top of that, you've got all the problems behind you and in front of you in getting the product to the customer in a timely manner.
Okay. Next question is for Bob. You mentioned, in a previous call we had that Cyberwell picked up a whole new clientele over the period of the pandemic. I was wondering if you'd like to talk about that a little bit.
So as a welding supplier, our industrial safety supplies are NIOSH certified, and they're not FDA certified, so they're not suitable for medical applications or medical environments like hospitals or clinics. During the first weeks of COVID, the FDA gave emergency authorization for all NIOSH products, industrial safety products, to be used in medical applications and facilities. So we got a whole different customer base. We sell welding equipment, and all of a sudden we had doctors and hospitals, and we had dentists. We even had veterinarians buying respirators, personal protective equipment from us because of COVID.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Adam for a question now. What kinds of fulfillment changes, like technology, equipment, helped you get through the pandemic, and what obstacles or glitches did you encounter? What did you wish you'd known ahead of time?
That's a big topic. Obviously, it's been
Yeah.
A lot of my time the last year, but in a way, we were lucky. We were in the middle of moving to a new distribution center, doubling our size and implementing a lot of new equipment right in the middle of March of 2020. So it was a crisis getting through the panic buying surge of March in the middle of moving and setting up a new DC. But I don't know how we would have gotten through those first couple months without the extra resources, automation, and capacity of our new distribution center. In this facility, we now have autonomous mobile robots moving carts around the warehouse with our items to get them from the picking to the packing stations. This allowed us to social distance while increasing efficiency and throughput, since we had staff that was out through either preventatively or through COVID or what have you. So it allowed us to increase our capacity with less labor, as Lev mentioned, is a difficulty. So that was a great resource. We also implemented voice picking at the same time, which further improved our efficiencies. As far as the outbound fulfillment, as Lev mentioned, delivery times have been increasing throughout the last year, and customers are experiencing those frustrations. And so we've been doing a few things to try to incentivize customers to order earlier and larger amounts, which A, reduces their chance of running out, and B, reduces our numbers of packages going out that could clog up the fulfillment system. So really incentivizing earlier ordering instead of just getting a sample kit and then waiting for that to arrive to decide which items are right for you, giving significant discounts and incentives to go ahead and place that first order now instead of waiting, because you might have to wait a little longer than you expected. Other incentives for customers to double their order. In our industry, customers tend to buy about a month's supply of incontinence supplies at one time, really incentivizing them to go ahead and make it worth their while 2 months at one time. So increasing our average order value, reducing the number of shipments going through the system at a time when there are significant challenges and delays, and really doing everything we can to work with our customers and communicate with them, let them know about the delays, advising them when to order, to plan a little bit extra ahead of time, so that the last thing we want is people running out of those essential medical supplies.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to jump in on this?
Yeah, so we're an e-commerce company, and we sell primarily to the do-it-yourselfers. And so for us, the number one thing that we've done is let the customers know upfront when to expect their parts, because they're planning their time. And so if somebody's planning to take a Saturday off and work on their car and do some repairs to their vehicle, we just want to make sure we tell them upfront about all the delays in the system. And then, if FedEx or UPS or whoever it is that's delivering the part, if they're late, the customer doesn't call them, they call us. And so, where is my order is the number one call that we get today. And so trying to get in front of it with either an email or a text message, letting the customers know, where their package is in the transit system, when they can expect it, if the package has been delayed, what's the new ETA. So we've done a lot of work around just letting the customers know upfront when the package is going to be arriving.
Okay.
From a purchasing standpoint, of course, longer lead times blow up any sort of, if you have a min-max purchasing system that determines inventory levels, or if you have a more dynamic inventory system that keeps track of, well, based on this volume and these lead times, then we're going to be reordering here. All those formulas are blown up. So from a purchasing standpoint, you've got to make sure that you're changing all your parameters. You're looking at them, if not daily, at least weekly. And to Lev's point, I mean, you must set the accurate expectation for your customer. And the biggest problem that we've had, and I'm sure all three of us have had during 2021, is you set a 4-week expectation to a customer on a product that typically goes out the door in 2 days. And then you find out from the manufacturer in week 3.5 that it's now a 6-week lead time. And so being able to communicate those things honestly, as soon as the information is available, communicate that stuff.
Okay. The next question is Lev Peker. One big issue is that, stimulus payments to Americans were sort of unpredictable. This seemed like there was a lot of wrangling in Congress for a while, and then the thing would pass at the 11th hour. And, how did that uncertainty, what did it do to your ability to plan your inventory and, everything else about your business?
Yeah, so we have really long lead times. So for us, the lead times are between 4 and 6 months. So we're placing bigger and bigger buys, and we're basically ordering more and more safety stock because, like Bob said, the lead times have been extended out of any country you go to right now. It doesn't matter whether you're in Asia or you're in Europe, lead times are longer because it's harder to get space on the ship. It's harder to get containers. It's harder to get them through the port. Like, there's just a lot of delays in the system. So we're just buying more and more safety stock, so we predict demand at SKU level, and then we'll look at variability in demand. And then based on that, we buy safety stock. But right now, because demand is so unpredictable and because the supply is so unpredictable, we end up buying more and more safety stock, which makes your turns go down. But it's kind of an investment into, hey, the customers are there. It's just a matter of getting the supply. And I think the companies that are, continuing to buy and continuing to bring the product in are going to be the companies that are going to keep winning, because in the end, it is an inventory game, right? You got to buy the right SKUs and put them in the right locations. But our answer has been we keep importing more and more, and we're buying to longer and longer lead times.
So did anybody else want to jump in on this one? Because this is probably a problem you've all had.
I think one of the reluctance to bringing in extra safety stock is cash flow. And what do I do if I get stuck with this inventory? I can tell you for us, so every commodity that we deal with, whether it's copper, steel, stainless steel, polycarbonate, anything that goes into manufacturing a welding machine, a welding helmet, filler metals, we have had typically our major manufacturers have one price increase a year. It is May 20th. Our biggest manufacturers have each had 4 increases. So I would encourage those folks who have concern about cash flow, which is a real concern. If you are selling a commodity, it seems like commodity prices are only going to go up. So it's also a decent investment. Not only do you have to invest in your inventory to deal with the long lead times, it seems like it's a good hedge against increased commodity prices, which I think are going to continue throughout 2021.
Right. Also, Bob, you mentioned the effect of labor issues and weather, world events on your business. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Well, the stimulus checks are a double-edged sword. They pump a lot of extra cash into the economy, but at the same time, they incent people to stay out of the workforce. So at a time where we're trying to deal with an increase in economic activity and trying to hire people, it's very difficult, and you are having to pay the people that you can get to come out of unemployment. You got to pay them more money. So we're paying employees more than we typically would, of any given position, especially customer service and warehouse. And yeah, it's like even today, with Louisiana having record rainfall, North Texas having record rainfall, it's like, what else could go wrong to complicate the just the supply chain, the logistics chain in the United States? Dallas froze. That added to already bad freight woes. They closed I-80 for a couple of times because of blizzards in the winter. That's a major east-west. Now the I-40 bridge over the Mississippi into Memphis, which is FedEx's largest hub in the United States, that's shut. And so we're just to deal with all, and you mentioned before, Suez Canal was shut, plus the problems at the port, all these things, again, they're blowing up. Well, how much should I have on inventory? How much should I have on order? And it is crazy.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the things you're doing to address this in your business?
I would say if I looked at purchasing once a week, it's literally every day. It's checking lead times every day, and all right, how do I have to adjust? So yeah, increasing not only the amount of product that's being ordered, but the frequency that those products are being reviewed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I would just say, one other thing we found is, since we were doing a lot of importing ourselves, we were aware as lead times and shipping prices were changing quite rapidly. But it turns out some of our suppliers, who might have been US-based suppliers, and if some of their items were coming from overseas and they were not involved in importing containers on as frequent basis, were a little bit shocked that when it came time to place their orders, they were hearing for the first time in a couple of months how rapidly things had changed, and therefore they had to really decide if they were going to pay those expediting fees to get products in when they hadn't planned ahead. So anything you can do to communicate with all of your supply chain what's going on a rapid day-by-day basis, so that everybody's informed and nobody's surprised, would be to great benefit.
Right. I have a question from the audience, which I think is probably directed at Lev. In 2020 and 2021, we've had a rise in the theft of auto parts. How is that impacting your business?
It's never good when a customer gets their catalytic converter or something stolen, and we've definitely seen that on the rise. There's going to be at some point a shortage of catalytic converters because of what Bob mentioned. Raw materials are going up in cost. It's making it more and more difficult to make them, and so we've seen some part names where demand has been kind of ahead of other part names because of the theft of auto parts, and catalytic converters is probably the #1 stolen part name out there. And if any of you have Ring or any of the other applications that are that have a in my neighborhood type notifications, you'll see that catalytic converters being stolen is a very, very common occurrence. So yeah, we've seen some of that. But it's isolated to certain part names, not everything.
Okay. We have a few minutes left, and I wanted to briefly ask all of you to describe how the pandemic has, changed the culture of your businesses for good or bad. I think we'll start with Adam and then others can jump in.
Sure. Yeah, I think early on, since we were in the middle of the move and lockdowns, transitioning office staff customer service to remote work from home, it really kind of allowed us to really focus on our mission and values and really communicate that on a much more regular basis than we had prior to the pandemic. So it really kind of brought everybody together as we're kind of all in one team, supporting the warehouse team that was really early essential workers coming in to keep shipments of these medical supplies going out to our customers without interruption. Then of course there was, some stages there of Zoom fatigue and remote workers feeling a little bit isolated from the rest of the team, and me and all of the managers and directors really had to just get out there on a much more regular basis to bring people together, sending items and other materials home to kind of share the culture with the remote workers as well. We did have a stage in the late summer, early fall of last year where we started to transition workers back to the office for a period of time before kind of a surge here in Illinois. So it's something that's been a lot of ups and downs. It's definitely a challenge, I think, overall, especially as it's dragged on for as long as it has without kind of a full return to work. Certainly there will be some aspects that employees have really found beneficial, where for certain people with certain schedules and family responsibilities, having more flexibility to work from home is something that I think will definitely be retained. At the same point, we're still working now to kind of bring the team back together. And the few instances where we have started to have group gatherings and meetings, there's really a sense of togetherness. It's like, you don't know what you have until you can't be with it for a while. So there's definitely this camaraderie that's, people want to share their stories, they want to come back together. So we have to deal with that at the same time, making sure the business objectives are being met and we're servicing our customers.
Mm-hmm. Lev, how about your business?
Yeah, very similar. So we were in the process of moving to a new office a few miles away from our old office. And it's funny, we had a town hall on a Thursday afternoon and we told everybody to pack up their boxes, and movers would come over the weekend and move their stuff. And then 2 hours later, we had a meeting and we said, well, still pack your boxes, but the movers are going to move your boxes, but you're not going to come to the new office. And so we still haven't reopened the office to the employees. We have a few team members coming in, but for the most part, it's work from home, probably until fall, at which point we'll start slowly reopening. But it's been difficult. For me personally, I'm a big believer in kind of having the hallway conversations, and creativity kind of gets lost. You think of something when you walk by somebody's cubicle, and you can grab them and talk about that idea right at that moment. It's a little different when you have to go and schedule a meeting and kind of plan it, and a lot of that magic is lost. We did deal with a lot of Zoom fatigue as well, and we implemented, every last Friday of the month, we gave employees off just to allow them to disconnect. We had a lot of other programs to kind of bring employees together virtually. We had a virtual holiday party. So we did a lot of things to kind of let employees disconnect and at the same time bring them together. And then in the distribution centers, the main goal of our DCs was to make sure that people felt safe. And so we gave extra sick days. We provided, any employee that needed time off. Anybody who was in a high-risk group, we told them to stay home with full pay. So we did a lot of things to make sure that employees on the front lines felt appreciated and felt safe coming into the work environment. And so, social distancing, providing PPE, all of that is pretty standard. But, going above and beyond and making sure that they actually felt like, hey, we can come here and this employer cares about us. That was really important for us. So very similar to what pretty much everybody went through, and trying to really make sure that employees felt appreciated.
Okay, and we got a couple minutes left. Bob, how's the culture change of cyber world?
Well, I agree with everything that Adam and Lev said. I'd said that the positive thing coming out of this is we can have a hybrid, particularly for customer service, working model now going forward, because we're forced into it and it works and it's great. But for our in-person workers who have worked all the way through the pandemic and we never shut down, And I don't think neither Lev nor Adam's business shut down either. Getting that culture, getting that community feel, that is going to be the challenge, getting that back with hybrid and remote workers still not coming into the office and interacting and having those hallway conversations. So positive, hybrid, flexibility, employment model; negative, lack of community, definitely will have a long-term impact, no doubt about it.
Great. Well, I think we're pretty much out of time now. I want to thank Bob, Lev, and Adam for your time. It's been a good discussion, and